Well, hello. Welcome here. This is the top left update webinar for December. We're glad you're here. Thanks for coming. My name is Matt. I go by the title of VP Kanban here at Top Left, and so I coordinate things. I do training for customers. You may have talked to me once or twice before, um, and yeah, guide the product in terms of what we're building. So I'm glad to be here with you. Thanks for coming. Just a couple of things about the webinar. I imagine most of you have used Zoom before, so hopefully you know how to use the chat and the questions. Go ahead and do that anytime. Try to keep an eye on that. If you have questions or want me to go into some extra detail on a topic or two, we'll also take questions at the end. It's kind of a wide open question time. And this will be recorded. So, and you'll get an email about that tomorrow. So if you need your colleagues to watch that, then that'll be available. Okay, so what we're going to do at the beginning here is talk about the all the updates that we made. Well, not actually all of them, because we made so many. We made so many updates last month that we can't even talk about them all. We definitely got the highlights. Give you a couple of sneak peek into what we're going to be shipping here in December or very early January, and then open it up for any questions that you might have. So let's start. Yeah, let's start talking about some of those things that we changed. All right. Excuse me. So one of the first things that one of the probably the main thing that we added, the biggest individual thing that we added in November was custom swim lanes. Uh, no, custom fields, which includes swim lanes. So as you know, whether you're a ConnectWise shop or Autotask shop, there are ways to add custom fields to your tickets and projects and so on. So and up until now, we haven't supported them in TopLeft, but now we do. So let me show you a little bit of how that works. There's two things that you can do with that. So if you go into a board, to edit it here, take a look at this section here. So this is the auto task mode. It'll be maybe labeled a little differently in ConnectWise, but it's basically the same thing. So here's your options. Like these are all of the custom fields that we have for our auto task tickets. So of course you'll see different fields listed here depending on what type of board it is, a ticket board or a task board or a project or so on. But you'll see those listed here. This is where you select it if you want it to appear on the card on this particular Kanban board. So if you had, I don't know, story points, for example, if you wanted that to appear on there, then you could do that. And then you just click save. That's the first thing that you can do with custom fields. And the next thing is that you can use them as grouping for your swim lanes. So that can be pretty powerful too. You'll notice that the ones that we have here are, well, it's a little bit different, I guess, in Autotask and ConnectWise. You'll see mainly the sort of the string type ones here. You won't see you will see the numeric ones are listed here, and the string type, I should say, numeric and like all of them are listed here. Here at the moment, we're just listing the string ones, text and notes and things like that. If anybody has a real need for numeric swim lanes, then just say so. It's the main reason we haven't done it is that there hasn't been demand yet, but we're open to suggestions for that. Autotask has ConnectWise has a more sophisticated way of having numeric swim lanes, so that's why the Autotask one is still listing everything. Yeah, so that's what you can do. Obviously, just click save there, and you see it. We don't have really great example data set up in our environment here, so I won't show you the result of this, but this is very easy to set up, so I think you'll like that. The second thing you'll notice is actually, you can see it here already, is we've completely updated the board edit page. If you've used it before, you would have known that we put all of the general options, all of the filters, and all of the columns just on one page, and it was a very, very, very long page. Now we've split it up. You get your different tabs here. You can even scroll, and the tabs are always visible no matter how far you've scrolled. Um, and you also have a button to continue editing rather than just save and always sending you back to the board there. The actions button, which used to be at the top, is now down here. So you can clone and delete your boards. So we think that's a lot easier to use. So hopefully you found that easier to use already. Another thing that we've done is nothing that I can really show you, but it has to do with how the system all runs. We migrated to a new cloud provider. We're running on one called DigitalOcean right now, and it's been much more reliable. That's kind of the main reason that two main reasons is one is more reliable, and they have much more sophisticated fault tolerance and whatnot in their network than our old cloud provider. And also for flexibility, because we are kind of laying the foundation for us to grow, including in the future offering regions around the world, um, hopefully sooner rather than later. So that's something that is available to us now. So we're happy to be able to offer the improved reliability, because we know that Kanban is definitely important for you, and flexibility and potential for us to grow, to offer better service. Another option here, actually, it's still right here, is this option here for service call details. Let's see, it's basically it's similar but named slightly different here, in assignment details in ConnectWise mode. So I'll change that and I'll show you. So one thing that you can do here is this changes the view here. So if I hop back to ConnectWise, my Autotask one. So the old mode would just show you assignments like this, just little indicators here, initials. You hover over it to see the details of any service calls or scheduled assignments there. But some people like to see see the details without hovering. So you can enable that option, and now you can see these details here. So if it's just an assignment with nothing in the calendar, then you just get a plain view like this. If it is in the calendar, then you'll get the details there, as well as a little colored outline, the same as in the other mode, telling you, if it's blue or green, it's in the future or today. If it's red, it's in the past. So keep an eye, just like always, keep an eye on the red things here. If it's red, it means it probably deserves some attention. And there you go. You don't have to hover over anything. So this is especially useful for anybody who's still doing a lot of scheduling into the calendar, because then you'll be able to see those details without hovering. Another thing we added was a new Swimlane option for folks who use the project boards. So that would be a board like this, where the cards actually, they don't represent tickets or tasks, they represent the individual projects. And you can see here that the swim lanes, this is called the projects by start date. So you can see that, the estimated start here is June 26th. And so it's in a swim lane by that week, the June 22 to 28, as well as with all of these ones here. Now, the one that we added, like this particular swim lane has been around for a while. The one that we added is the swim lane by end date, because that's also useful as well. I mean, you can imagine how that looks, so I won't show you. But obviously, it's useful to know, if you've put in an estimate, an end date for that project, it's useful to be able to visualize that on the board. So that's available now for both ConnectWise and Autotask. You can set a project end date swim lane, and it also shows it by week. One thing you might have noticed too is when you were entering time, if you had the practice of, for example, making a time entry and changing the ticket status at the same time, you may have noticed that sometimes you would encounter errors. If the ticket was in a status that allowed time entry, which in Autotask is most statuses except the complete one, but ConnectWise is a bit more sophisticated in terms of like any status can allow time entry or not allow time entry. So if it was in a status now where it was permitted to enter time, so you're doing that, but you also wanted to change it to a status which happened to not permit time entry, which could be the completed one in Autotask. It actually wouldn't work because the software was changing the status and then entering the time. So now we just made it was not It just made it more intelligent. So it will look at what do we know about if time entry is allowed, and whether you're changing it to or from a status that permits time entry, it'll just work. So that will be something that your technicians will like. They won't have to think about that anymore or do things in 2 steps in order to avoid that problem. So we have a couple. Now I'll talk about things that are only for the ConnectWise mode or only for AutoTask mode. So in ConnectWise mode, we've known for a while that there's a bit of a disconnect in that when you change ticket statuses, move it to a different column or enter time or so on, that it would actually appear in ConnectWise, especially in the audit trail, that would appear in ConnectWise as coming from the Kanban API member, because as you know, when you set up TopLeft, you may have to go and make a API member for us so that we can fetch your data, and we'd also use that same API member to make the changes when users make changes on the board. So what that would look like in your audit trail is that the Kanban API member is making a bunch of changes. And that is not ideal, I mean, for obvious reasons. So we now offer you a way to put your individual ConnectWise members can make their own API member, which will get certain keys. And then when that has been set up, if that member makes a change, like, just dragging a ticket from one status to another, that would go into the audit trail as being made by that member because it's submitted using the API keys that they've created. So that is it's pretty simple to set up. Just go under ConnectWise API keys. I don't happen to have it set up here in our example environment, but it's really easy. There's a knowledge base page here. There's also a video about how to set it up. So if you want your audit trail to not say anything about the Kanban API member, just have your technicians set this up. It only takes a minute or 2. So that's a good improvement. We also added the ability in ConnectWise to be able to keep tickets that are in closed statuses for a configurable amount of time. So you might be aware that previously, any tickets that were in a closed status, we didn't keep those at all. So you could actually see those dropping out of a column. If you could still have a closed status mapped to a column, but we wouldn't actually keep the tickets in our copy of the database when they're in that status, just mostly to limit kind of how many tickets that we keep from your service, from your ConnectWise, to kind of limit the load that we place both on our servers and your server. So, but people have wanted to show those tickets for a reasonable amount of time, a day, a week, or 2 weeks or whatever. So there is an option now that you can go into and configure that. That would be under admin options, keep closed days. How long to keep a ticket after it's been marked closed before it is removed from TopLeft in days. So go ahead and set that. Be reasonable. Don't go and set it to 365 days. Wouldn't advise that. Yeah. So now if you normally have a workflow where tickets go immediately to a status where they're a closed status, but you still want to be able to review those tickets in Kanban for a week, for example, now you can do that. That would be the right option to set for that. Okay, things that have been improved in AutoTask mode now. Got a couple of things, especially relating to Swimlane. So here is a, let me find the other board here. Okay, so this one I think a lot of folks will like. So here is a board with swim lanes by queue. So it's very straightforward, easy to understand change. Now you can drag tickets between the queue swim lanes. So that's going to go and, this ticket is going to go from the client portal queue to the IT change request queue. Pretty straightforward. And that was widely requested because changing the queue is something that can happen, especially during the triage process for AutoTask users. Another option is, I won't demonstrate this because you can imagine what it looks like, but basically, as you know, we have a swim lanes by the assigned member Everybody uses this. This is the most commonly used swim lane. Now, by the swim lane that we have always had would show tickets in a swim lane if someone was assigned as the primary resource or as any secondary resource. So, for example, Michael Brown here, he's assigned on this one as a secondary resource, and that's useful because now Michael here can see everything that he's responsible for in some way. But some auto task companies thought it was worthwhile to only see where someone is assigned as the primary resource and not see anything where that member is assigned as a secondary. So now there's a new Swimlane option which only shows tickets that are assigned to someone to who is the primary resource on that ticket. So in that one, as an example, we would see tickets like this, Michael Brown, so he's primary there, there, and on this one. So we'd see those tickets here, but where he's assigned as a secondary there, and for example here, in the primary resource swim lane, these tickets would not appear. And that can help you if you are very precise about like who's really in charge of this ticket. It's only the primary resource. And now you're able to see that. Also, you would get a swim lane here for tickets that don't have a primary resource assigned, which would be a problem if primary resource is important to you. Okay, so that about wraps it up. As far as the updates to the application and the service go, I do want to point out you can find we post the major updates to this section here. So don't ignore this. Pay attention to what it says in this little icon up here. If it has a number and if it's red, that means there's a new message for you here. And you'll learn about these improvements before everybody else if you pay attention to that. Also, you can subscribe because these get sent out by email as well. So if you want to be the first to know about any improvements, put your email address in there and you'll get those in your inbox. A couple of things that are coming up. I promised to tell you a little bit, give you a little bit of a sneak peek here. So there's a couple of things. I don't have anything to show right now, but keep your eyes peeled, especially on those announcements, because there's some useful things coming for both managers and technicians. So one of the things that's pretty close to being, we're getting ready to ship it pretty quick here, is something that's been in our roadmap for a long time. So as you can see here, we've always offered these numbers here, which show you the number of tickets in this column for all of the swim lanes. That's this number. This one is showing you the number of tickets just in this swim lane here. Okay, so that's definitely useful. Certainly, you need to know the number of tickets there, but it's a little limited as well in that it doesn't give you any information about the difference between a ticket that has a budget of half an hour versus a ticket that has a budget of 8 hours or 16 hours or whatever. Those are very different tickets, obviously, and it would be useful to know about that. So we are adding some features for summing, showing you the sums of, for example, the number of budget hours in these tickets. So you'll see that in the header up here, so you can see of all of your swim lanes. Also in each individual swim lane, a few different things. So there'll be things like the number of budget hours, the number of actually logged hours. So that'll give you a lot of intelligence into, how many tickets are here in the in progress, and maybe whether there could be 5 tickets in different swim lanes, but maybe one of them actually has 40 hours on all of these 5 tickets logged, versus 5 tickets that have a total of only 5 hours logged. Okay, so that's very different and deserves different treatment from your technicians and your managers in order to address that sort of thing. So it'll give you intelligence into that. Also, the number of hours that these tickets have been in these statuses here, like where it says waiting approval for 4 days, 3 days, 2 days, and so on. So we'll sum that up so you can get an idea of in total how long have these tickets been sitting here. That's also useful in terms of focusing on what's the biggest problem right now. So you'll be able to see sums and averages for that sort of thing. Also, we're going to count up the number of tickets here that have warnings and these exception notices. So things like tickets that have been above, like this one here is red, so it's violating the threshold for how long its tickets should be in this column here. So it'll count up the number of tickets that have at least one warning threshold, warning indicated on it. Basically, how many tickets have some red on it? So just in this view here, that one, that one, that one, and that one, these are all violating some rule on that, and that one's not. It doesn't have any red tags on it. So ignoring all the other tickets in this column, it would say 3 warnings here, or 3 exceptions. Actually, we'll count up the warnings too, where warnings are where it is getting close to the SLA, but hasn't yet violated the SLA, or getting close to the due date, but hasn't yet gone over the due date as well, because those are thresholds that you can set in the columns too. So we'll count those up for you, giving you a much better way to kind of zoom in and see, okay, where, just a lot more detail in terms of just being able to, instead of just looking at the number of tickets there, be able to look at a lot more detailed information. So that's coming too. And we expect to have that available definitely before the end of the month. I would hope in the next week, actually. So that's what's coming up. Another one is we have started work on the timers. So we know we've got a lot of feedback from you that your technicians like to use timers. Both ConnectWise and Autotask support them, but it's not something that's available in TopLeft. So we're adding that. You just be able to click a button on your card and start the timer, and then later make that into a time entry very easily. So that's something that I would hope to have. Well, we'll release it in a few different stages as we build out that feature, and some of it will be available before the end of the month. The full feature I would expect is going to be available sort of early to mid-January. So we're excited to offer that. Also, you may have seen a notice go through a couple of 3 or 4 weeks ago about what we were calling the completed ticket challenge. So this is not a application thing. This is training that we are offering now. So we have a number of customers going through this plan, which is basically 3 weeks of training. You get an email every morning with an accompanying video, 4 days a week, and then there's a call for the community, everybody who's involved there on Friday, and it's 3 weeks of that, a very specific training in what you need to do to reduce your number of tickets that you have, especially for people who feel kind of chaotic because their technicians are starting more work than they're finishing. So we know that's a very common problem to have in an MSP. A big part of that is because the ConnectWise and Autotask have made that an easy problem to get, making the solution hard to see. With Kanban, is part of the solution to that, so you can see that work, but there's also practices that you need to adopt in order to really tackle that problem. So we are offering that training now. So we're going through with some existing customers now, and we're going to launch that again we'll launch it for everybody in probably the first half of January. We'll announce a new intake on that. So we're really excited for that, and we think that's going to be really helpful for folks who, their technicians have 10 tickets that they've started but haven't finished, or 20. Some companies, each technician has like an average of 30 or 40 or 50 tickets, and so that's the sort of folks that we think this will be really helpful for, using those methods as well as the software that you have with Kanban. So keep an eye out for that announcement, or if you want me, if you know that you're interested in that, just shoot me an email and I'll make sure that we let you know when that's available. So just matt@topleft.team. Let me know, and I'll make sure that that we email you when we're ready to start the new intake. We're really excited about that. That brings us to the end of all of the announcements. So I'll hand it over to questions from either the Zoom question and answer section, or you can toss that in the chat if you want as well. Or if you would like to come on video, then when you raise your hand, and I'll see if I can turn you into a panelist and you can come on and appear on video if you'd like to do that. I can see that you're all typing furiously, or maybe you're just waiting for the first person to go. So we'll skip the first question. We'll go straight to the second question. Well, it could be that you're all shy today or that I've answered all of your questions. You're welcome to stay on if you're still typing in your question there. If you just came for the announcements, then thanks for coming. We appreciate you coming here, and we'll get the video, the recording here on our YouTube channel, and you'll get an email about it tomorrow, so you can forward that off to your colleagues if you think they should watch that. I will stick around for another minute if there's any questions coming. All right, I see people leaving. Of course, if you have any questions, always shoot those off to help@topleft.team. Obviously, we're very happy to help you there. Thank you for attending. Have a great day and a Merry Christmas.